Okay, friends, I'm really lit up about something right now. I'm also really heartbroken, like so many of us. And I just wanted to record a message because I feel like this is an important moment. I'm in the studio painting, and a friend said to me, she recently is lit up about a creative project, an endeavor, and she actually just got started on it right before she learned about the shooting in Texas. And then she said, how can I create when there's so much suffering and devastation in the world and in this school shooting and all these school shootings? And I want to respond to this, and I want to share my response with you all. So first of all, I want to say, I'm voting for gun safety. I'm voting, I'm donating, and I want concrete change. I want my children safer. I want your children safer. I'm grieving. I'm heartbroken. I'm really working to stay present with how heartbroken I am and not just numb out. I have lost someone in a tragic murder before. And when you know someone and it reaches national media, you know that national media is ordinary people that are loved and known, and it's not some fictional happening that you can just pretend didn't happen. So I wanted to say all that. And to speak to the question, how do we be in joy when there's also heartache and suffering and devastating loss and war, is what I really want to speak to. So this is central to my work. I think of the imagery that comes to my mind is the lotus flower that emerges from mud that we create not because everything's fine, but we create because we're heartbroken and because we're suffering. I think of one thing I remind myself, I center in, is this. I find myself I have catastrophic thinking, that I think today is the worst it's ever been, that it's crescendoing and it's especially bad. And yesterday is super difficult on a lot of levels, and I don't dismiss that at all. But I also remind myself that there has been suffering through all of human history. There's been war, there's been violence, there's been horrible things done. Some are covered in the media, some are not. But even if I never read another news story in my life, I could know with confidence that there are people suffering around the world today and through history. The other thing I think about is all through history. I feel like when you open a history book, basically all you learn about is suffering and the overcoming of suffering. War, and you learn about art. You learn about paintings, stories, novels, music. These are the things that endure, as well as the story of suffering is the story of, moving through that suffering. And I think about so I don't create in the studio because the world's in total peace and then it's like, okay, now there's enough, equanimity and peace that I can do this creative practice. And I also don't create in the studio because my own world's at peace. It's not like everything's in order and perfectly fine and I'm not stressed and afraid and grieving and nervous and just like everyone else. So I create in spite of those things. And another thing I think about is how the world doesn't need the products of our creativity. So I feel like I know this, the world doesn't need another painting. The world doesn't need another novel. The world doesn't need another poem. There are a lot of people in the world and their history is long, and we don't need more products, but what we do need are people who are vibrantly alive, present, awake, wrestling with the sorrows and heartache of our time and engaged in a way that they're helping make the world a better place through one-on-one interactions, community interactions, national work, international work, but we need people vibrantly alive to do that work. So I think the creative practices we all do are necessary because of how they change us and then how they enliven us to move in the world. And it is kind of, I have kind of absorbed this teaching from Howard Thurman. You might recognize that quote in what I've said of, he said, don't ask what the world needs, but ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And I think it's important to know that, like, this is a civil rights leader who said this, and who would have a long list of things that the world needed, still needs. And that his call was, come alive, people, wake up, stop numbing, be open to what beauty can be created. Create art in all its forms that help us digest trauma, suffering, and help us imagine a new way of living. I mean, we need that. I'm trying to think what else. The other thing I just want to say is there are countless ways that we can become stuck in a creative process. And one of them is, what's the point? Why does this matter? And, I was just talking about that. Is this even necessary in a world filled with heartache? But there are all different ones: imposter syndrome, fear, self-doubt, all of them, not knowing where to begin, all of the resistance, all the barriers. And I just want to name that my understanding, having created hundreds of paintings, having sold hundreds of paintings, if you asked me, like, if someone was successfully selling artwork, would they not face that resistance, that doubt and fear? And I'm just here to tell you, I still have that. And what I do is I see it as part of the creative process. It's like corn on the cob. I have this childhood memory of shucking corn. It's like, to eat corn, you must shuck it. To do the creative process, you must move through imposter syndrome. You must move through fear and self-doubt. So I guess I'm just making this video because whatever your creative outlet is, and it might just be walking, it might be gardening, it might be gazing into the beautiful face of a baby. Like, creative, I define creative as things that appear unnecessary, things that expand breath, things that help us metabolize and digest our lives, things that expand beauty. So whatever your form of creativity is, I just encourage you to step into it. Yes, the world is filled with suffering. Please vote, please donate, please be part of making a difference, and move from that peace you can find in your creative process. So pick up your brush, keep writing, keep dancing, keep making music. Please, we need you in a world filled with destruction. We need you to create. We need you to help build us back up. We need you to help us process and digest, help us find the courage to speak up and to speak out. So I think of, I'll just close with these words that have touched me deeply from Eva Kor. She is a Holocaust survivor. She's since passed in 2019, but I saw her speak, and she had a beautiful message of call to forgiveness after horrible traumas that she had been through. She found forgiveness later in her life. And at the end of her talk, she said, be happy. Happy people do not start wars. And this just soaked into my heart of just creative outlets that help us find happiness, find joy. And sometimes creative outlets help us just be present with heartache. It's not always fun. But I think overall they help us to be healthier people who have processed lives and are present for the joy and the heartache. But I think of Eva Kor saying, happy people don't start wars. And we think of war often as a national or international event. And there is also small forms of war, violence, interpersonal violence with our words, with our actions. So happy people don't start wars on any level. So be happy. So be creative. Please, please, please. We need you.